Well, hello, everybody. When I think of joy in play, I can't help think about my kids. Got a little lab experiment going on at my house, and it seems to me that only time I really think of them having joy playing is when they're doing free play. Playing with Army Man or something. I would count Minecraft in that. They did creative mode for a solid year before they ever played the real simulation of the game. Even if we're playing Monopoly or something, that's fun, but I don't know if I really think of it as joy. We're in a certain kind of structured experience. My son's playing Shadow of the Colossus right now, and just the other night I heard him from the other room just yelling. He's 10 years old. He's yelling at, "This is a stressful game!" So he likes it, he's playing it, but I don't know if it's joy. I think he's having some kind of fun, but so the angle I want to come at this talk at is trying to think of how can you get more free play into the games we make. Games that are not necessarily designed just for that kind of play, but have some kind of more structured experience. How can we give the player more freedom of movement and ability to play the narrative, for instance? So, is this the button? Obviously, I failed the intelligence test. Everybody else did just fine. Oh, it's not the light, it's below the light. I got it. All right, so just a quick note on some of the stuff I've been doing recently. I am at UT doing a little more reading of theory and that sort of thing. It's kind of in an academic mindset. A couple indie game projects on the side there. The middle one's on Kickstarter now, actually, just a couple days ago. And also, I'm doing some consulting for a company called Psycor in Austin, which is an artificial intelligence company. And they're kind of building a corpus of all human knowledge, right? So some pretty hardcore, neat stuff. And they're building a game in Unity that has a character who knows a lot of actual stuff, and at the same time pretends like she doesn't. So really kind of interesting, sophisticated stuff. And it's a research project for the government, so it's kind of an experimental vein. And so I've been thinking, how can some of this more theoretical, pointy-headed stuff be applied to just more straightforward game development or even commercial game development? So I'm calling this talk, it's really about branching narrative, right? I'm calling it variable stories. And for somewhat obscure reasons, which I think will be clear on the next slide. I press the right button. Punchline fail. I'm doing up and down. It's right and left. Oh my gosh. Okay, right and left. Should have paid attention to the briefing. So enough sitting back, just listening to people talk. We have to do some real work now. So this is a representation of Betrayal. It's put together by some AI researchers from a few years back. And we're actually not going to go too deep into it, but kind of the main point of this is to kind of show a reference point of how some of the stuff might look if it was manifested into a game. And they did some hard thinking about Betrayal. It's a kind of a complex concept if you think about it. It's not just about having person A do something to stop person B from getting something they want. Person B also has to think that person A is not going to do that thing to stop them from getting what they want. So these guys kind of thought through all those nuances of Betrayal, created this structure which is somewhat rigid and scripted, but within it there are all these variables. So just, for instance, who the people are, what the actions are, and from this they could generate prose stories. Sorry, I can't see it here, so I'm looking over here. So I want to start with a very simple example. That's kind of the high pointy-headed academic example. The most simple example I could think of is just clicking on a character and they say stuff, just so it's like a series of one-liners. So I just want to play an example. One of my big pet peeves is playing an RPG and you go in and every character has like 2 lines. You click on it a couple times and they're obviously an info terminal, breaks the illusion that they're people with thoughts in their heads. So here's an example I think that does it right.
What I wouldn't give to be back at sea. I told them I'd be damned if I sail under a usurper's flag. You should have seen their faces. Curse the Lord Regent. I might have taken to piracy after the Navy, but then inspiration struck me, and I started assembling our little group here. The Empire was built on its Navy. Never forget that. I served proudly until the bureaucrats took over. Pendleton's a good man. Used to be close to that snake, the Lord Regent himself. Don't be fooled by the fact that Pendleton's a noble, though. Not all of them are terrible. I bought this bar years ago. There were some happy times here before the plague hit the city. Before the Empress was killed and everything went to shit. We'll make it right again, together.
Okay, so there's actually a lot more to that, but it's a game made here in Austin. And, you know, I like, you know, games that have that depth, right? You can just dig and find more about a character. And kind of the point I want to make is very simple. It's just a linear sequence of bits of content. But there is some structure there, and it's fairly complex. This is what I have my students create these things in their games. And I hate for this. But you can kind of see that you're authoring some kind of structure here. You do something in a sequence at the beginning, maybe some non-committal lines the character has. Then they lay all their, like, you know, pains on you about their finances or whatever, and then maybe they get in some kind of random state toward the end, right? So kind of a crafted structure, but then some room for variation at certain points within it. So I think these opportunities are at a low level and a high level. So at the high level, there's lots of literary theory that have tackled this problem of deconstructing a narrative, putting it into some kind of you know, analytical form. This is just kind of one example. I'm not going to say it's better than any others, but Vladimir Prop broke the Russian folk tale down into morphemes and gave them cute little symbols. That's kind of why I like his system better than others, as well as a formula for how you can construct any Russian folk tale, right? There we go. Just please copy that down. I'm not sharing this deck, so if you want this. So interesting. It's fun, pointy-headed academic stuff, but how does this relate to actually making a game? And I think the fantasy is, and I'll kind of channel Will Wright here, is that, you know, if you do have some kind of, you know, structure of a dramatic experience that you've conceived of, if you could give, you know, if you could have that formula to generate many of them, then you can give the player the freedom to create their own, right? So just as a concrete example, just imagine that in a sim game, a player is a hoarder. You know, they love gold, and you just keep mining gold and collecting it. The game can figure that out, and maybe let the player strike it rich and strike a, you know, big vein of gold somewhere, and then have bandits come and take it all away, right? So you can, you know, in a way, craft a dramatic experience, give the players highs and lows, but yet provide that variability at the same time. So what I think is the true, though, is we've been doing this kind of thing all along, and I think in a lot of different ways in games today. We just may not be conscious of all the ways that we're doing it. Just in building a level, this is just kind of a breakdown of a mission you might see in a straightforward game level, where you have multiple solutions to problems, right? That's something that's been being done for quite a while now. But the act of doing that, of just having multiple ways to get a quest, multiple ways to travel to do the quest, those are two of Prop's morphemes right there. You're supporting different player experiences, right? Some players may want to go to the bar and chat with people. Other players may want to be doing things for money. So you give them different ways to get on this track for this quest. They're in your dramatic structure, but you're giving them their own experience in some way. So a basic way that we've already done this sort of thing. Defining a character, you know, that's been done for many years, a rigid structure of what a person is, what all people are. Everybody has intelligence and charisma, but you have variations, you know, in these boxes in certain locations. Monsters the same way, a different set of stats for monsters, but a core concept. In games, I had the pleasure of working on an MMO for 6 months and got to work in an interface like this. We have sometimes like a template for a quest, right? And that is also that kind of structure. It's a narrative concept, not always open to the player though, right? This is usually crafted by a content creator, but it is that same kind of structure. And I think that the metaphor that holds all these together is this notion of there's a mad lib. That's all these really are. Is you've come up with some kind of crafted experience structure, even if it's a game level or whatever it is, and within it you're finding those variation points and giving the player choices to fill them in. So back to this complicated example, I think that's all this is. I don't think most game developers would necessarily need to know first order logic to build this kind of structure in a game. You might define it differently for different types of games, but it's the same kind of thing. You come up with your high level structure and then give the player some freedom within it. So I don't know if this looks any prettier the second time around, but I hope you can kind of think of some of the possibilities that might be available to the designers. There are two challenges, I think. One is just how do we define these different abstract concepts. That's pretty tricky, and different for each type of game, as well as how do you find the opportunities in games. So I'll come back to this. I don't have a lot of time. I have 1 minute left, so I can't really give too many solutions, but we can revisit the problem. I would make 2 suggestions on this. You might go down to the low level, and if you want to give the game a way to generate content within these boxes, you might end up with something like The Sims, where these blocks of crafted human text are replaced by emotes, right? But you might go the other way too and ask yourself, how would this template fit into a more generative narrative system? And so at the high level, you might, it's already doing that, right, with the paladins level 20 to 25, but you could add more metadata to that and have a different kind of structure. So I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to say opportunities are everywhere in games for finding these opportunities for variation, and I'll just leave you with this video.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track. There was nothing here, no choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here. It was baffling that Stanley was still just sitting in the broom closet. He wasn't even doing anything. At least if there was something to interact with, he'd be justified in some way. As it is, he's literally just standing there doing sweet FA.
So anyway, another Austin game that I think teaches all game developers what you need to do, what player state you can know about, and like your player could lean against the wall and smoke a cigarette or something, right? With that, I'll get off stage because I think my time's up. Thank you.